Vsauce, Kevin here, and Matt, something happened in December that garnered a lot of attention online, but I'm not quite sure that anyone that I saw at least really put it in the proper context or kind of communicated the significance of this moment. And that is that there are now two distinct YouTubes. And the event that was the watershed moment surrounding this was YouTube Rewind. So YouTube Rewind came out, and then PewDiePie's Rewind came out. And the difference between that two, I think, for the first time, like clearly, like, I don't know, like a flag has been planted on the moon that now says, like, there's a distinction between what YouTube thinks YouTube is and what the community and original creators on YouTube think YouTube is.
It's definitely a fork in the road in a certain way, where it's pretty much a turning point in terms of how we think about YouTube. And in 2017, with that rewind, the community hinted that there was not a perfect matchup, right? If you remember, there was some criticism, a bunch of dislikes on the video, but it was nothing like we saw in December.
Yeah, so just to back up a little bit, for those who may be unfamiliar with YouTube Rewind, the point of YouTube Rewind is essentially a commercial for YouTube, or at least that's what it became. It seems like in the beginning, it was more or less a celebration of YouTube, where like YouTube was funding this one video at the end of the year that was sort of a roundup of all of the fun moments and the unique things that occurred on the platform, and also featured a lot of the top creators of that year on the platform. But in subsequent years, it became more and more, I think, what YouTube's vision of YouTube should be to kind of like people unfamiliar with YouTube, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was something like a year in review. I mean, it was sort of a video yearbook of what made that year impressive in the YouTube community. And then all of a sudden, it became a thing that was a little bit that. We're still trying to be a lot of that, but it was more about communicating YouTube's vision and values going into the next year. And it's not that one of those is right and one of those is wrong. It's that they are different things, and the community certainly sees them differently.
Yeah, so what happened in 2018 was that YouTube's Rewind came out, and it was just glaringly obvious that something has changed between what YouTube sees itself as and what the people who watch and like and dislike YouTube videos sees it as, because that video quickly became the most disliked video of all time. Right now, it is sitting at 15 million dislikes, which is a lot more.
That's a lot of dislikes.
It's a lot more than number 2, which was Justin Bieber's Baby, and that has
right.
that has 10 million. So,
and that took how many years to get to 10 million?
Oh my gosh,
8 years, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, years and years. And YouTube Rewind 2018 just blasted that
how many
out
days
of the water.
Did that take?
It was I believe it was within a week. Is it a week?
Yeah. It really does take a lot to get somebody to go out of their way to say, I'm going to make a statement with my mouse that shows how much I disapprove of the time I've just wasted. You really have to push somebody to get them to commit to disliking something. So it's a significant stat.
Well, and especially with a video that's supposed to be celebrating the thing that the people who are watching it love. I mean, these are all people who are part of this YouTube community. They comment on videos. They, talk about it. They follow creators off of YouTube onto Instagram and, Snapchat and Twitter or whatever. So here they are watching this video that's supposed to be making them feel like really excited about the platform. And instead it's like, no, this is not at all congruent with my experience day in and day out on this website.
So YouTube releases the Rewind in December. This reaction happens, right? The community pops up and makes it known what they think. Then PewDiePie does what?
So then PewDiePie, and actually with the help of a few memers, 2 of which are great friends of the Create Unknown, Dolan Dark and Grandayy, but then also another memer named Flying Kitty, they put together basically a meme review, and PewDiePie was the host of it. And conversely to YouTube's Rewind, PewDiePie's Rewind got 7.5 million likes as compared to only 70 3,000 dislikes. So it became the most liked non-music video of all time.
So thinking about the numbers on that, it really puts into perspective what's happened here. So the YouTube Rewind, 1 in 10 viewers disliked it based on the numbers you just said, as opposed to PewDiePie. That video, the like to dislike, it was 100 to 1. Now imagine getting about 100 people together, having 99 of them enthusiastically pumping their fists. And then, there's just one person who's like, this wasn't for me. It's an overwhelming approval rate. And obviously, the people watching PewDiePie are kind of self-selected to like what he's doing. But when you get these kinds of numbers with the 45 million views or so, the huge positive response to what he did, the complete lack of a negative response to what he did, it starts to emerge that there are two general communities of people on YouTube who are viewing different content and viewing that content differently.
Yeah, so I think that there's YouTube and now there's PewDTube. And that's where we are.
No, I think that's a fair assessment.
In 2019. I think it's fair to say that there are two different things. I'll call it PewDTube because, that PewDiePie Rewind video compared to YouTube's Rewind video, I think was the moment that we can all point to and say, look, there's something kind of weird going on here that, look, everybody has felt this way for a really long time. This isn't anything new. There have been, grievances for years in regards to what, creators want the platform to push and what YouTube wants to push. And generally speaking, they have different motivations. A PewDiePie has a different motivation than, Susan Wojcicki has when she's trying to sell Johnson & Johnson and Toyota on spending hundreds of millions of dollars on ads every year, so that, the PewDiePies of the world can have pre-rolls and mid-rolls on their content.
I think that's accurate. And you've had a fair amount of experience in that process, haven't you, with seeing YouTube's different pushes on advertising and how they try to work with both the advertisers and the creators to make that system function. Yeah.
And it's really weird for me, because when I started making videos and uploading videos to YouTube, it was, weird potato cartoons and me dumping pudding on my head and recording it with a laptop camera in my apartment above the hot dog shack. And then,
have you really come that far though?
No, not really. That's funny that you say that because recently there was that meme going around with the 10-year challenge or whatever, where you would show a picture of yourself 10 years ago. And I found a YouTube video of me using a Rambo action figure in 2009. And then just last year, I used a Rambo action figure in which video was it? I think What is a Paradox, to explain Achilles and the tortoise.
It was that or one of the game ones, yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't come that far. But going back to, it's been weird, from where I started with the platform to then being invited to Brandcast, Brandcast is an annual event that YouTube holds for advertisers, for, Fortune 500 billion dollar companies, to entice them to buy advertising, to spend, a portion of their insane marketing budget every year on YouTube.
And what do you, as a creator and the people like you, what do you do when you walk through the doors at Brandcast? What happens?
Oh, so they have a red carpet and the YouTubers walk down the red carpet. And it's supposed to be this there's a lot of pageantry involved. But at the end of the day, there are not a lot of people looking to snap photos of me and I'm not exactly, I don't know, who's important, who's a famous celebrity. I'm so out of the loop.
I don't know who is important.
Who is important? Yeah. Cardi B. I'm not.
How sad is it? Yeah, Cardi B's good. Cardi B's good. But how sad is it that we're both thinking we should Google who the world likes right now because we're so out of touch?
I know. I'm thinking Brad Pitt, and I'm like, Brad Pitt. This is not 2001.
What is this, 2011?
Not even that.
You're how about that Brad Pitt who was so good in Thelma and Louise? Really nicely done, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm no Clark Gable.
So how many people like you are at Brandcast? When that kind of thing happens, are we talking like the top 100 appealing people? Is it top 1,000, top 10,000? I mean, how big or small is this ecosystem?
I think it's like 200 or so, roughly 200 people, top YouTubers who, work well with YouTube, and, YouTube, it feels comfortable kind of parading around in such a way that, we're there to kind of be the celebrities sort of in the room. And a lot of the YouTubers will also do performances. So it's a show that they put on a performance essentially for the brands, kind of like a party, I guess you would say. And like there are keynotes where, Susan Wojcicki comes out and does her spiel about how great YouTube is. The year that I went, Casey Neistat did a talk about his experience on the platform. Then like Katy Perry comes out and does a concert. Like it's pretty ridiculous. It's pretty over the top. Like it's not a little thing. They spend an absurd amount of money on this event because it is a really big deal. Like this is where they get their funding for the year essentially, so that everyone can have ads on their videos. This is this is how it happens.
So this is one half of what YouTube is, and then we get the other half. And there was a tweet from, it was Eddie Burback, who kind of summed up what the difference is between these two different mindsets. You get this Brandcast kind of YouTube, and then a completely different, independent, community-driven type YouTube.
Yeah. So I have Eddie's tweet here. He said, "I think YouTube's biggest mistake with the community is thinking everyone who watches YouTube videos is part of the community. There are people who actively follow and support a ton of YouTubers, and then there are people who just watch Desposito 20 times.
That seems fair. These are not the same type of viewer, are they?
No. And the thing is I don't think one necessarily, even though they don't cross paths, I think that YouTube's job here is really to allow for both versions of itself to flourish. They need Casey Neistat to talk about, working with brands on stage just as much as they need iDubbbz slicing his hand open while opening mystery boxes.
Right. Yeah, they're not the same thing, but they both matter, and they both kind of depend on each other, don't they?
I mean, I think so. I certainly think that there are probably a lot of people out there, probably a lot of people listening to this conversation who think, well, I wish that YouTube would just go back to the way it was. It would go back to being Chad dressed up as Donkey Kong throwing barrels down a hill at Max Mofo and iDubbbz, and that being on trending or whatever. But trending isn't even trending anymore. I mean, I don't know if you saw this, but there's literally a change.org petition for YouTube to change the trending tab to staff picks, and I find that pretty compelling.
You'd think, and I always thought, or did a while ago, that trending was really kind of algorithm-based, where if it's something that a lot of people like, they're engaging in the content, watching a lot of it, seeing it 100% through, leaving comments, a lot of likes as opposed to a lot of dislikes, that it would kind of automatically be placed on that page because it's a combination of factors that show people are really into what it is, whatever it is. And then I remember a couple situations with your videos a few years ago, and you look at that and think, well, really good things are happening with this video. It's completely blowing up. Why is it not on trending? And why are these things on trending there instead? It makes no sense. And we'd see it with so many other videos. And you mentioned something from H3, didn't you? That a couple years ago started to question what's going on there.
Yeah. I pulled up a tweet from Ethan from H3 Productions from 2017 that said, "It is clear to me by now that YouTube's trending page is completely manipulated. New vid with 3+ million in 12 hours does not trend. Why?" And I think it's all part of this. I mean, I think it's all part of YouTube wanting to be a certain thing to certain people who go to the website. And then, gigantic channels like PewDiePie's YouTube Rewind, that is the most liked video now of all time, was not on trending at all.
So out of how many videos in the history of YouTube, this one has received the best in the history of humanity on the site? and doesn't make it to trending, that's pretty clear that they're picking winners and losers.
Yeah, I mean, picking winners and losers, they're picking what they want YouTube to be. I don't know how else to articulate that. Like the staff picks thing, I think is so interesting because it reminds me of video stores. Like when I was a kid, you'd go to like rent a movie. Like a lot of people listening to this are like, what is a video? So let me tell you about Blockbuster Video, kids. Gather
you
around.
Stroll on down to the Videodio.
Yeah, Videodio to pick up, Rocky IV. But, you'd go into a video store and there are hundreds, if not, 1,000 movies that you could rent. Let's use bookstores. Maybe that's even that's probably where this originated. You go into a bookstore, there are 4,000 books. How do you know what to read? Okay. Well, it turns out that the people who work at the bookstore love books. That's why they work at a bookstore. So they, you know what I'm saying? Like they read a lot. They love books. That's why they work there. They have some probably pretty decent opinions on what's a good book and what's a bad book. So the bookstore would have a section called staff picks or something of the like. And you could just go to that section and say, oh, these are the recommended books for me to read. And I have a hard time thinking that the trending tab is anything at all other than YouTube's version of staff picks. This is what we would like people to watch who come to YouTube.
The interesting thing about that example to me is that if you had a bookstore that was doing this, and pretty much every bookstore I've ever been in does exactly what you've described, they would have a sense of how the customers responded to staff picks. So, I don't know, maybe the books that Philip picks out and puts on the shelf, people don't buy, but the ones that Karen does, people are really into. Well, let's have Karen do a few more staff picks. You'd have feedback and data on how useful that was. And we have no idea what happens with the trending tab. We don't know how the community responds to that or how they behave with it. And I think that frustration is really what drove people to react the way they did to this rewind. All they can do is do something as simple as like or dislike a video to show where they fall on this. And we were talking a little earlier just now about how hard it is to get somebody to dislike something. PewDiePie made a video specifically trying to get dislikes, didn't he? Was it 1 million dislikes or so?
Yeah. PewDiePie made a video called "Can This Video Get 1 Million Dislikes?" That was the title of the video.
Oh, okay. And he got a few million more than that.
He got 3.8 million dislikes on that video, yeah.
Okay, so the most popular creator on the platform specifically asks people to take a certain action. And that doesn't even come close to the organic dislikes that the YouTube Rewind 2018 had. And that really shows how I think frustrated viewers are on YouTube, because all they can do is like, dislike, comment, share on Twitter with a comment of their own, something like that. There's not a lot they can do. And part of it is having no real knowledge about why trending trends, what gets in there. I think a little resentment builds too when you've got an awesome creator who you really love who never gets thrown a bone by YouTube. There's a lot of frustration that's been building on everybody's end, from viewer to creator. And I think that blew up in December. And now we have two absolutely distinct paths on one site.
And I don't know what YouTube does about it, honestly, because they're not going back. Like, they're not, like, the path of YouTube from corporate headquarters, their point of view is they're going all in on celebrities and like traditional media stuff is what I know for a fact, because I've had these conversations with YouTube. And I don't know if it's all entirely based on money, if it's entirely based on wanting to get, more ad dollars from these brands that feel safer advertising on AMC than they do on YouTube because of the unpredictability of what their ads are going to run against. That really came to a head with the Adpocalypse, right? So the Adpocalypse was this thing where all of a sudden these advertisers were shown to have had their ads placed on completely objectionable content. And so a lot of advertisers got scared and they pulled their ad dollars off of YouTube, and then YouTube had to just come crawling, begging on their knees and did all of this stuff. They built a whole infrastructure for advertisers after that, where like advertisers could have their own back end where they could decide like some sort of checklist of where they want their ads to run. And I don't know exactly, because I've never seen it, what those parameters are, like what things they can choose and not choose. But I know that that was built after the Adpocalypse.
Everything that you're talking about here over time, which is, I don't know, let's say 6 to 8 years, right, from when YouTube really started to be a thing versus where it's at now. It's this perpetually maturing and more clearly defined brand on its own. And I think that's a significant element to what's happening here. You're saying that YouTube can't go back. They can't have that Chad throwing barrels at iDubbbz video trending because now that's outside their brand. They've worked very, very hard to set it up that way. And when you put the outside things in that mix, you really kind of undermine that brand that you've built. So they're kind of stuck. At the same time, there are a whole lot of people who want the things that are outside of YouTube's 2019 brand.
Well, yeah, because that's what makes YouTube interesting. I mean, if you look at the trending page, okay, right now, kind of what YouTube is today and like what they've been moving towards is sort of like a dumping place for TV clips. Like if you go,
Yeah.
it is. It's like, here's what,
you're right.
you know, for people who don't have TV, here's the best of television. That's kind of what trending is. It's like the best of TV in like 5-minute chunks rather than what it used to be or what it still is, but they can't talk about it, which is the home of the most original and experimental content in the world. That's what it actually is.
And that's what built the site up in the first place, was letting all of those creators do their thing, letting the community decide what they wanted more of, what they kind of didn't, and letting the creators respond to that by making different content, stopping content in a lot of cases, doing something different. This whole thing is fluid. It's a back and forth. Everybody's involved in it. And the end product is something where both sides are really happy. So does that hint at a possible solution or direction for YouTube, knowing what they've done and how it's worked so well? Does that give them really a chance to shake things up a little bit and put this on the right track?
I don't know. I don't know in what ways they're able to do that and still put on this facade, this like corporate facade that they have, this mask that they've been wearing where it's like, yeah, YouTube is where Ariana Grande like sings in funny voices or you know, or where John Oliver's like latest takedown of so-and-so, that, or even just like sports clips, music videos, and movie trailers. It's all of this kind of, you know, snippet style of mainstream media from a front-facing perspective. And the big thing I don't know what they do with, let's just circle back to YouTube Rewind, okay? What do they do with that? Like, let's just start there, because I don't know where you go now, because clearly they can't do what they did again this year. That was a PR disaster. And the entire point of YouTube is the PR, you know, brownie points that they're supposed to be getting from the community, but also from the general media at large.
I don't know if it's that clear to them, though, because the numbers and the reactions on the 2017 Rewind were really not good. And if you made a video that was received the way that one was, in terms of the comments, the likes and dislikes and all that, you would never, ever make a video like that again. Well, there isn't even a word for what they did in 2018 because doubling down doesn't cover it. They took this thing that was roundly shown to be not what the YouTube community as a whole wanted, and then thought, let's do this on a 50,000 times grander scale and give them more of what they hate. So you look at that and think, well, they definitely can't do that for 2019. And I think, well, they just did it. Maybe they'll really shoot this one to the moon and show us something supremely offensive and horrible and whatever it is for 2019 Rewind.
But I can't imagine that, like, even if they were happy with the product, even if they were happy with how the video turned out, and let's say that, you know, Coca-Cola and Starbucks or whomever are also happy with it. Like, they think the message is great and it looks really cool because, like, Will Smith hosted it, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you look down and you see 15 million dislikes and the comments just absolutely like abysmal. And at the very least, if you're Coca-Cola, you got to look at that and say, like, something is off. Something is wrong here between like what YouTube wants to make us think it is and what YouTube's community thinks about that.
Communicate, and people who put money out too for any kind of advertising or sponsored work or anything like that, we both know the way they process results. And it's pretty tough to spin to them, even that a certain number of dislikes or disapprovals is actually a healthy thing. If you make content that's kind of saccharine and loved by absolutely everybody, you're probably not pushing it very hard, right? So we know how difficult it is for brands to understand that maybe 10% of reactions are dislikes actually shows how good that content is. So imagine you trying to sell to a brand, oh, this video that you've paid a whole lot of money for is actually great because 5 or 6 times as many people who liked it really hated it. They really hated it. I don't know how that conversation goes, but if I'm on the advertiser side, I'm probably not buying what YouTube is selling.
No. And obviously the people who love and watch YouTube and have accounts, that log into an account and have like a username, because that's another thing. Like the amount of views that YouTube garners from people that are not logged in, they'll never sign up, but they'll like click on the thing. That's a significant audience too. So they do literally have 2 audiences here, one of which is this kind of casual, broad, not logged in user, and another which is, everybody listening to this podcast for sure, people who are fully engaged in the platform in a way that I think is so much more I don't know what you would say. It's like such a there's such a deep commitment and connection, I think, on YouTube between like the creators and the community, and that's what I think makes it so special. And what YouTube is putting out there as what makes it so special right now is something entirely different. It's this, well, I guess it's just like I said before, it just seems like TV 2.0.
There must be value in that because, number one, they keep doing it. And number two, it's not like all of those videos are received badly. People do like to see Jimmy Kimmel highlights. There's all sorts of stuff that we look at as being kind of a reshuffle and snippet of something you can see on TV. But people do appreciate that and enjoy it. So you've got a segment of people who look for that kind of content, interact with YouTube in a kind of generic, non-specific way. Then you get the people who are into specific creators who are much smaller than John Oliver. They're going out of their way to talk with the community of fans in that space, to talk with the creators themselves. Like, how many times do you have exchanges with Vsauce 2 fans on Twitter? I see it every day. These are 2 different kinds of people, and it seems that YouTube hasn't fully committed to letting both styles flourish and supporting both styles in a way that allows any type of creator to succeed on the platform and to let the community decide who is going to succeed.
Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention earlier in regards to whether they were just doing this kind of thing for the money, it's definitely not just for the money. It's also for publicity and for reputation within the entertainment industry. Because I know for a fact that YouTube and like a lot of top YouTube creators in general, there's like a huge lack of respect that occurs from traditional media towards YouTube media. Like they're not writing a lot of glowing articles. They're not inviting YouTubers on the Today Show. And if they do, it's super rare and it's super specific and that's like super safe, 9 a.m. on a Tuesday for, homemakers to watch. And YouTube feels that. I know that they do. They feel like they should be more respected for what they're doing. And I think that that's another part of this, is that they also want, like, there's like an ego involved, I think.
The more seriously that medium is taken, though, generally, and that goes from people in the industry to just generic everybody all the way down. The more seriously the medium is taken, the more money is going to flow in. And that's a good thing. It's not a greedy thing. YouTube can have the money to promote all sorts of different programs, develop new tools that make creators be able to do more things, do them better. So it's not just we're raking in piles of cash sort of way, but the popular conception makes a big difference there. I had a doctor's appointment in November, I think, and I'd never talked to this doctor before, and he's doing small talk and all that. And he's like, oh, what do you do? And I tell him, and he says, you can make a living off that? It's like, I actually can make a living helping to develop content and repping creators and this and that. If I told him, like, well, I'm a writer on Scandal, or I rep actors who exclusively work with the major networks, he would have thought I was an absolute baller. It would have been a completely different conversation. And changing that popular conception all the way at the top, all the way down to the bottom, that's not a bad aim. Now, are they doing it in such a way that marginalizes a lot of creators, disrupts a very natural, organic development on the platform? That's the real question. And they need to consider whether what they think of as being very positive for the brand and creators overall and viewers, whether that's actually doing more harm than good.
Yeah. So, it'll be really interesting to see what happens with YouTube 2019. Like, I'm kind of chomping at the bit in a lot of ways to see what they do there, because, I agree, man. Like, it could be just a tripling down on that. They could just keep going harder and harder into it and ignore, I could foresee a time where they just turn off likes and dislikes. They turn off comments, and they just make YouTube Rewind into like literally a commercial for YouTube and celebrates almost nothing that has to do with the community. I could foresee them doing that, or I could foresee them potentially going the other way and really trying to reach out to creators and see like what is going on, because clearly we're really out of touch with what people who are using this platform every single day are interested in. It's not John Oliver flossing. It's definitely not. Like, no one saw John Oliver Fortnite dancing and thought, yes, this is exactly what I needed to see in my life, and this is what represents 2018 to me.
That's how I'm going to remember an entire year. I think that your prediction on this is probably going to be a combination of things, and I think they're going to make an effort to figure out where it went wrong and to talk to creators. I don't think what they find out is going to be implemented very well. I just don't get the sense that they're going to let the creators and the viewers drive this one. That's the big distinction between what you described in the beginning of the old rewinds and what happened now. The viewers absolutely drove the early rewinds. The more control viewers gave up, the worse they liked the rewind. Okay? I think they're going to make an effort to talk to the community, and then I think they're going to do whatever they think is best for YouTube as a whole, and probably turn off the likes and dislikes, turn off comments, and I would not be surprised if there was no YouTube Rewind 2020 after that.
Yeah. That could be it. But ultimately, I think that this 2018 PewDiePie versus YouTube thing was really big, like you said, fork in the road. And I think the things change from now on. And I just was really excited to hop on here and talk this through with you, because, you and I had been talking about this for a while, just casually. And it was really helpful to just kind of work through it, in front of a microphone. And I hope everybody enjoyed our thoughts on this. And I'd love to hear, what you guys have to say about it too. Like, if you want to leave like a 500-word comment down in the comment below with your thoughts regarding PewDiePie versus YouTube, I'll read it. Like, go for it. Like, let's talk about this.
Yeah, we will both read it, and we read all the comments that come in anyway and respond to a lot of them. But we absolutely take everything that comes in seriously. And I want to hear what other creators, large and small, think about all of this. I want to hear what the casual viewer thinks. I mean, not that the casual viewer is probably listening to this, but just every type of person in the YouTube ecosystem. I want to know what they think on this, and I want to see how everybody's analysis and predictions add up toward what we end up getting at the end of 2019.
Let's do it. All right. Well, thank you for joining us here on this little PewDiePie discussion. You've been listening to the Create Unknown. I'm Kevin Lieber. With me, as always, is Matthew Tabor, and we will speak to you next time. We've been your hosts, Kevin Lieber and Matt Tabor. Check us out over on YouTube at Vsauce2. If you like what you heard, please tell a friend, share with everyone and anyone. Friends aren't the only people you should share with. Share with your bitter rivals. Executive producer is Dave Kiney. Our theme song is from the incredible Mega Drive, so check out Mega Drive's website in the show notes. Let us know if you liked having this shorter bonus episode dropped into your lovely, darling lap. Until then, you are about to exit
Unknown. And as always, thanks for listening.